Hey everybody, Joe Brady here, and this image discussion and edit is all about finding the best image within your raw capture. A lot of times you just take a quick stop and something really catches your eye and take the picture, and then maybe you get home and you have no idea why you took the picture. So this is about finding the subject and making the subject really pop in the image. And one of the kinds of things we need to consider are how big is the subject in the frame? Are there other things that are bigger? Are there distractions? And do we need to reshape color and light? So that's what we're going to do with this beautiful image of Mount Shuksan in the Cascades of Washington State. So once again, we're going to take a look at a capture and try to figure out where the composition is. Where's the best way to illustrate the place by eliminating distractions and really focusing in on the subject. Now this is a 4-stitch pano of Mount Shuksan in the Cascades, about 12 miles south of the Canadian border in Washington State. And it's a beautiful place, and I was actually leaving the area at a place called Mount Baker, and the light was just spectacular, but it was changing quickly because there were clouds above circling around the sun, and sometimes the trees over here would get lit, and sometimes they would go into deep shadow. So I jumped out of the car. I didn't even have my tripod. I jumped out of the car and I did a handheld stitch of this pano. And how can you tell? Well, if I go to R to show the crop, you can see there's my handheld stitch. So not a terrible job, but obviously I captured a lot more than I needed anyway. So obviously the subject is the mountain, and we've got a lot of distractions. And even though this road sign is here, what does it say, slide area, even though it's there, that and the reflection in the water, because it's a different colors of distractions, that's going to have to go. Also, I couldn't get any closer to the lake because it was surrounded by these bushes and I would have had to step into the lake. So how can we make this all work? So after the basic stitch of the 4 shots, let's just go up into the basic panel and fix some of the problems. Well, let's bring down the highlights a bit. About that far. So let's open up the shadows all the way because the trees off here have gotten dark. And actually that looks pretty good. In fact, as we do that, let's bring the highlights down a little bit more. And then let's add some texture, clarity, and I think maybe a little bit of dehaze also. 10 points or so, just to add a lot to it. And yeah, actually that quickly, we've done a pretty good job. In fact, let me make a virtual copy of this. So this is what we've done just with the sliders. You can see we've added a lot more life to it. Now also, I had created a custom profile when I was up here. I'll cover this shortly in another video. But you can see under profile, I have one called Olympic 1. And look what it does for the sky color. You can see how it really changes the intensity. And unfortunately, the standard Adobe color profile does generally cause you to lose some blues and greens. Now also, I find this blue a little bit off. It's a little too cyan for my liking. So let's go down to HSL, Use Saturation and Luminance. Click on the pointer. We're going to adjust the hue. I'm going to push up. And I generally find 10 to 12 is what it needs. And we'll split the difference, go with 11 to get the sky where I want it. That's looking a heck of a lot better already. So now we can focus on the composition itself before we do some more fine tuning. So what are the problems? Well, the mountain is too small. Just notice it's just visually small in the frame. I mean, the mountain itself is only this tall, and we have this big thing of bushes in the front. So let's just cut to the chase and do a crop. We don't need all this stuff in the front. It's just a distraction. So I'm going to start by coming just below the bottom of the tip of this tree on the bottom. And on the top, let's come down. Oh, Joe, leave a little bit of room on the top of this cloud. I'd say about right there. As far as left to right goes, that's looking pretty good. Actually, we might add a little bit more on the bottom. And I think, I'm not sure about these branches on the right-hand side. Actually, they're okay. After we do the crop, you can see they're not a problem. So as I look at it, gee, I'd like a little bit more, maybe a little more on the bottom, and maybe a little less on the top, but I love those clouds. So that's something we're going to have to fix in Photoshop. But before we do, let's just add a little bit of life into the greens here. Let's get a brush. And I'm going to get a nice big brush. I've got auto mask on. Let's come down to the bottom, hit the O key to turn on the overlay. And let's just do a quick paint just all the way across here. These are the trees that I'm after fixing up or sprucing up a little bit. No pun intended. Yes, there's some spruces in here. And okay, so just enough, like that much. Let's add to the top here. Let's just get the top of these trees. And again, notice since I have auto mask on, it just selects the trees and leaves everything else alone. So we've got our trees selected. Let's hit O to hide the overlay. And let's add a little bit of life to that. I'm going to start by bringing up the exposure a little bit. Let's add some clarity. And as far as the color goes, I think maybe it might be a little too yellow. Let's come up to the color slider and we're going to push that over a little bit. So I click on here. I'm going to push it over to the blue a little bit. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. I like that. And we're going to do some little dodging and burning a little bit later also. But I think basically where we want to be. However, as I mentioned, I think I want maybe a little more in the bottom. So let's bring our cropping tool up again. And let's bring this down. Now again, you can always crop later. And I'm probably going to, but you can't uncrop after you do your edit. So let's add a little bit more on the bottom there, and let's work with that. So now it's time to send this into Photoshop, because I don't want to try to get rid of this sign in Lightroom. It'll probably make a bit of a mess. It's asking a little too much. So let's go up to Photo, Edit in Photoshop. So here's our image opened up in Photoshop. I'm going to zoom in on this sign that has to go. Yeah, we're above 100%. That's okay. Let's get the lasso tool. And I'm going to start drawing, but actually first I'm going to hold down the Alt key as I do that, because that will draw it in straight lines. And the beauty is I can then just drag when I want. So let's say down to about there. And I want to keep fairly close, because if you do that, it just makes it easier for Photoshop to figure out what it's getting rid of. Good. So now I can just hit Shift F5. If you're working on a laptop, it'd be Function Shift F5. And I want content aware on our fill. And look at that, it's gone. And as we get rid of it, you might decide you maybe want to paint over. So I'm going to get the stamp tool or the cloning tool. Hit the Alt key, and let's see, I'm just going to paint in there just a little bit to break it up. Something going on here, so let's do the same thing up in here. Get rid of that little distortion. Okay, same thing down in the reflection. We can't leave the reflection out. So again, I hold down the Alt key, just drag around here. I want to make sure we get rid of all the colors of the thing that's not going to be there anymore. So again, Shift F5 for our content aware fill. And got a little bit of yellow in there. So let's go with our stamp tool again. Hit Alt. Actually, you know what? I'm going to show you a trick here. The reflection is good, but it's the color that's off. I don't want to actually paint somewhere else. So let's come up here to the blending mode and change the stamp's action from normal, where it just paints over, to color. So what it's going to do, it's going to take the color from the area next to it, but leave the texture alone. So I hold down Alt, click, and then I just paint, and it just picks up the color. Beautiful. So we hit 0 and it's gone. Perfect. Now we're going to do one other thing. I'm going to back off on the zoom a little bit. Again, the height of the mountain is smaller than the sky above, yet I really want to keep the top of this cloud, and I want to keep this cloud in here. So here's what we're going to do. Get the marquee tool, or the M key, and we're going to drag across the top third of the image. I'm going to copy, Command C, paste, Command V, so that we have another copy of just that on a layer. And we're going to use Content Aware Scale under Edit Content Aware Scale. So you hold down the Shift key. I just want to bring it down from the top, and I'm going to drag down. And I want to compress that cloud so that the sky above the mountain from here to here is less height than from the mountain to its top. And that's going to make the mountain appear more prominent in the scene, and that's what we're after. Beautiful. Anything else we want to do here? You know what? As long as we're here, let's do some burning and dodging here. So let's create a blank layer. I'm going to change it from normal to overlay. And again, this is an optional step. I'm going to fill it with 50% gray under Edit Fill. and hit OK. And you notice nothing happens again. The way overlay works, here's normal. We just see the gray. Under overlay, 50% gray is transparent. And if I paint with dark, let's get a black brush, nice big brush, and I'm just going to work at 10%. And I'm going to paint with black. And you can see it's slightly darkening this foreground here. And that's actually fairly dark already. Let's darken over here a little bit. What we want to do is we want to keep the viewer, wherever they look, bouncing back into where the mountain is. This is already fairly dark. I think that's pretty good. And now we're going to hit white. So I'm going to hit the X key, which puts white in the foreground. And now I'm going to create a path that goes up. And I'm still working at 10%. I'm lightening this area leading up to the peak. And actually, you know what? As I look at the peak, let's go back to black. Hit X. Let's get a nice small brush. And what we're going to do is just darken up some of the shadow areas. So the places that are already dark on the mountain, let's add a little bit more darkness. It'll add a little more contrast to the peak itself. Just a little bit. All right. I'm going to hit the C key to bring up the crop tool. And let's just crop down to just above our cloud there. Right there, and hit enter. We're going to probably crop off some of the bottom in Lightroom later. Okay, so now does it look like I did anything with that burning and dodging? Well, watch if I turn this on and off. So if I hide the layer, look at the difference. It's subtle, but now your eye is now more directed to the middle. By darkening this a little bit and creating this light path, notice, look at the difference, how it changes where you look. This is now a little darker. This is now a little lighter, and that's where your eye is going to go. I think we're pretty good. So let's save this. We're going to send this back into Lightroom, just Command S. All right, so here's our image back in Lightroom, and it's looking pretty good. I think I want to darken the clouds just a little bit. So I've got a big brush. I'm going to turn on the overlay. I've got Auto Mask on, and I'm going to paint in these clouds, or select these clouds. In fact, let's get this here as well. We'll just add to this. And up here, I just want to add a little more darkness to them. And we're going to do that with dehaze, dehaze. So I'm going to hit O to toggle that off. Let's add some dehaze, which will just darken the shadows in the cloud a little bit. And it just, again, helps focus on our mountain. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Oh, we've even got the moon up here. We'll leave that alone. All right, let's hit done with that. So let's take a look at our final cropping. I think we do need to take a little off the bottom. So let's go to R for our crop. Let's bring it up again. Let's see, maybe not all the way up to this tree here. Let's give it a little bit more room. Actually, let's use our golden ratio line kind of along the far shoreline. We'll use that as our bottom third, and I think that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and add a vignette. And I'm going to pull the whole thing in. Let's make it less round, kind of focus it more towards the edges. We'll feather it out. We're going to bring the midpoint in a little bit. That'll allow the edges to creep in. And then let's back off the amount to 13, 14, 10, something like that. And again, when you quickly look at it, it doesn't look like we've done anything. But when you turn that on and off, you can just see that slight darkening of the edge. And that really makes it work. So let's go to full screen on this. And what a beautiful scene. You can see why it was just kind of like emergency pulled off the road. The light was just so spectacular on this mountain. And when you consider that when we started this exercise, here is the 4-shot Pano. And while the mountain is there, while the scene is pretty, the mountain is lost in all of the distractions. The color's off, the shadows are off, there's too much in the foreground. Yet, just with the adjustments we made, we've turned this into that. An absolutely stunning mountain view. If you ever find yourself up in Seattle, I want to say this is probably 3.5 hours northeast of Seattle, but a spectacular place. And this is a glaciated mountain, so it's got snow all year round. So hope you enjoyed that. We did get a little bit deep, but again, it's all about extracting the subject and presenting the subject in the best light, the best position, the best physical size, so that two things happen. One, you do go to the subject. It's the primary thing to look at. Yet, two, we still have enough of the surrounding area so you really understand its placement in the environment. I enjoyed that. I love this image. This is definitely getting printed. Hope you like that. Hope to see you online again soon. Till next time, be well. Bye-bye. So I hope you enjoyed that demonstration. Yes, it got involved. We used Lightroom, we used Photoshop, and we did some interesting adjustments to the image to really make it work better. And when you compare the raw file versus what we ended up with, world of difference, and now the subject is clear and it's obvious why I stopped to take that shot, and it's certainly worthy of a print. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you online again soon. Bye-bye.